You tell yourself this one was different. It starts with promise, with intensity, with a feeling that this time you finally found someone who understands you in a way no one else ever has. The conversations stretch late into the night. The connection feels rare, electric, almost fated. You ignore the small inconsistencies, the subtle emotional distance, the moments where something feels slightly off, because the beginning feels too good to question. Then, slowly, something familiar creeps in. You start explaining yourself more than you did before, waiting longer for replies, replaying conversations in your head, wondering if you said too much or not enough. You feel the shift, but you can't name it yet. You just know the warmth you felt at the start is being replaced with a quiet, anxious hum. And then one day, you realize you are no longer relaxed in the relationship. You are managing it, monitoring it, trying to keep it from slipping away. Again. When it ends, you tell yourself the same story you told after the last one. I just chose the wrong person. I ignored the red flags. Next time will be different. But there's a question that lingers, one you try not to look at for too long. What if this isn't bad luck? What if this isn't a series of unfortunate coincidences? What if, without realizing it, you've been walking into the same emotional room over and over again, just with different furniture? Think about it. You've dated people who seemed completely different on the surface, different personalities, different backgrounds, different lifestyles. One was distant and quiet, another was passionate and unpredictable, another was charming but inconsistent. Yet the emotional experience felt eerily similar. You felt unseen, uncertain, like you were always reaching, adjusting, trying to secure something that never fully settled. It's like emotional déjà vu, the strange sensation that you've been here before, not in the same place, not with the same person, but in the same feeling, the same ache in your chest, the same knot in your stomach when they pull away, the same mental spiral, wondering what you did wrong. You don't consciously choose pain. No one does. You don't wake up thinking, I hope I fall for someone who makes me anxious and unsure of myself. You're searching for love, connection, stability. But somehow the love you find keeps carrying the same emotional signature. And that's where the mystery begins. Because this pattern isn't random, it isn't proof that you're broken, and it isn't just about bad taste in partners. Something deeper is at work, something quiet, automatic, and largely invisible. You see, when you meet someone new, your mind doesn't just notice their smile or their voice. Your nervous system is scanning for something much older, something it already knows how to respond to. It's not just asking, do I like them? It's asking, does this feel familiar? And familiarity has a strange power over us, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. Because what feels familiar feels real, it feels meaningful, it feels like chemistry. But chemistry, more often than we realize, is just recognition, not of the person in front of you, but of a feeling you've carried for a very long time. That's why you can meet someone who looks nothing like your ex, acts nothing like your ex, lives a completely different life, and still end up in the same emotional dynamic. You're not choosing the same person, you're choosing the same feeling. And until you understand where that feeling comes from, why it feels so compelling, so magnetic, so hard to walk away from, the pattern doesn't just continue, it deepens. Because each time it happens, it reinforces the belief that this is just how love is. Uncertain, intense, slightly painful. Something you have to work for, prove yourself for, hold together with effort and overthinking. But what if love was never supposed to feel like something you're constantly trying not to lose? What if the reason you keep finding the same pain is because somewhere deep inside, that pain feels like home? Long before you ever held someone's hand, before your first kiss, your first heartbreak, your first late-night conversation about what are we, your body had already learned what love feels like. Not in words, not in ideas, but in sensations. In the way the room felt when a door opened, in the tone of a voice calling your name, in the tension or softness that lived in your chest when you needed comfort. Your first love was not a partner, it was your caregivers. And whether they meant it or not, they were teaching you a lesson your nervous system would never forget. Some children learned that love is steady, that when they cry, someone comes. When they are scared, someone soothes them. When they make a mistake, repair is possible. Their bodies learned that closeness feels safe, predictable, warm. But many others learned something different. They learned that love can disappear without warning, that attention must be earned, that affection arrives in bursts and vanishes just as quickly, that moods shift like weather, and the safest strategy is to stay alert, to read the room, to become whatever keeps connection from breaking. A child in that environment doesn't think this is unhealthy. A child thinks this is love, and the nervous system writes it down as truth. Not because it's logical, because it's repeated. Maybe love felt like waiting for a parent to come home in a good mood, waiting for praise that came rarely, waiting to be noticed in a house of emotional noise. Maybe love felt like walking on eggshells, learning to read subtle cues, the sigh, the silence, the slight change in tone, so you could adjust yourself before something went wrong. Maybe love felt overwhelming. Big emotions, loud arguments, dramatic reconciliations, intensity followed by distance, closeness followed by coldness.
To a child, these aren't red flags. They are the emotional climate of home. And whatever that climate was, your nervous system quietly concluded, this is what connection feels like. Years later, you meet someone new. You tell yourself you're choosing based on personality, shared interests, attraction. And on the surface, you are. But underneath that, something faster and older is making another decision. Your body is asking, does this feel familiar? Not, is this healthy? Not, will this be stable? Just, have I felt this before? Because familiarity, even painful familiarity, feels like home. This is where attachment begins to reveal itself. Not as a theory in a textbook, but as a living pattern in your life. The child who had to earn attention often grows into the adult magnetized by emotionally unavailable partners. The distance feels strangely compelling. The inconsistency feels like a challenge. When affection finally comes, it feels like a reward, proof that you were good enough this time. The child who lived in emotional chaos may become the adult drawn to intensity. Calm feels foreign, almost suspicious, but volatility, the highs and lows, the dramatic closeness after conflict, that feels like passion, like real love. The child who learned that their needs were too much may become the adult who asks for almost nothing and ends up with partners who give exactly that. This is not self-sabotage in the way people casually use the term. It is something far more complex and far more compassionate. It is emotional loyalty to the past. Your nervous system is not trying to hurt you. It is trying to return you to what it knows how to survive, even if what it knows is anxiety, unpredictability, or emotional hunger. Intensity becomes confused with intimacy. Anxiety becomes confused with attraction. The flutter in your chest when someone pulls away doesn't feel like a warning, it feels like chemistry, like something important is happening. Your system lights up, not because you feel safe, but because you are activated in a way that's deeply familiar. Meanwhile, someone calm, consistent, emotionally available might feel underwhelming. There's no dramatic chase, no guessing game, no emotional roller coaster. And so a quiet thought appears. Maybe the spark just isn't there. But what if the spark you're used to is actually your nervous system recognizing an old emotional pattern? What if what feels like passion is actually a reenactment of a childhood environment where love and uncertainty were tangled together? This is why you can intellectually know someone is not good for you and still feel pulled toward them. Why your friends see the red flags instantly while you feel an almost gravitational attraction you can't explain.
You are not choosing suffering on purpose. You are choosing what your body has been trained to call love. And until that training becomes visible, it runs quietly in the background, shaping your choices while you believe you're just following your heart. But your heart, in many ways, is following a map drawn long before you had a say in it. A map where closeness meant effort, where love meant uncertainty, where connection meant adapting, proving, enduring. And every time you meet someone who fits that emotional blueprint, something in you whispers, "This is it." Not because it leads to peace, but because it feels like home. You don't just fall for people. You fall for unfinished emotional business. This section illustrates how someone neglected emotionally may unconsciously seek partners who trigger that same feeling, not because they enjoy suffering, but because the psyche is trying to finally receive the love it didn't get the first time. But instead of healing, the same wound is reopened again and again. Suspense builds around the tragic irony. The very strategy meant to heal the past keeps recreating it. There's a moment that confuses many people, and it often happens at the beginning of something that could be good. You meet someone kind, emotionally available, consistent. They respond when they say they will. They don't disappear for days. They don't make you guess how they feel. And instead of relief, you feel unsettled. You tell yourself, there's no spark. It feels flat. Something's missing. But what's really missing is the emotional chaos your nervous system learned to associate with love. Because trauma doesn't always feel dangerous. Very often, it feels like home. The human nervous system has one priority above all others: survival. And to survive, it must learn to predict its environment. It watches patterns, it memorizes emotional climates, it studies the tone of voices, the timing of affection, the rhythm of connection and withdrawal. Whatever environment you grew up in, even if it was inconsistent, emotionally distant, or unpredictable, your system adapted to it. It learned the rules. It built internal maps. This is what connection feels like. This is what closeness costs. This is how love behaves. Familiarity became the signal for safety, not because it was healthy, but because it was known. So years later, when you meet someone whose emotional patterns resemble those early environments, your body recognizes the terrain instantly. The emotional unpredictability, the subtle tension, the feeling of having to earn closeness. Your heart calls it chemistry. Your nervous system calls it familiar. And familiar to the body feels safer than the unknown, even if the unknown is actually healthier. This is why calm love can feel strangely uncomfortable at first. When someone communicates clearly, respects your boundaries, and remains steady, there's no emotional roller coaster to decode. No guessing, no chasing, no dramatic highs and crushing lows. To a regulated nervous system, this feels peaceful. To a dysregulated one, it can feel like absence. No intensity, no urgency, no emotional spike. And without those spikes, the body doesn't release the same cocktail of adrenaline, cortisol, and dopamine that unstable dynamics produce. There's no obsession to feed on, no dramatic reconciliation to create relief, no anxiety to temporarily soothe with small doses of affection. So the mind interprets the calm as boredom. You don't feel pulled in, you don't feel consumed. And because your history equated emotional intensity with connection, the absence of chaos can register as a lack of love. Meanwhile, someone emotionally unavailable or inconsistent triggers something electric. They're hard to read, their attention comes in waves, sometimes warm, sometimes distant. Your system lights up. You think about them constantly, you analyze every message, you replay every interaction. Your body is flooded with chemicals designed for survival, not romance. And you interpret that activation as passion. But what you're feeling isn't deep connection, it's nervous system arousal. Your body is in a familiar state of alertness, the same state it learned long ago in environments where love and stress were intertwined. The same emotional posture of leaning forward, trying to secure closeness that feels just out of reach. It feels powerful, magnetic, meaningful,
but it's often just your past being reactivated. There's a quiet, almost conspiratorial aspect to this process. Not a malicious conspiracy, but a deeply ingrained one. Your system is trying to guide you back to what it recognizes because familiarity feels safer than unfamiliar peace. It's not trying to hurt you, it's trying to keep you oriented in emotional territory it understands. So when you step into something healthier, your system doesn't immediately relax. It becomes cautious, suspicious. This is unfamiliar. Where's the catch? Why does this feel so quiet? Without the old emotional signals, the tension, the longing, the fear of loss, your body doesn't know how to interpret the experience. And so the mind steps in with a story. I'm just not feeling it. There's no spark. It feels flat. Something's missing. But what's really missing is the emotional chaos your nervous system learned to associate with love. Because trauma doesn't always feel dangerous. Very often, it feels like home. You've probably told yourself a story about attraction, that it's spontaneous, mysterious, a spark that appears without warning, pulling two people together through some invisible force. You lock eyes across a room, feel something shift in your chest, and later describe it as fate, chemistry, a connection you couldn't explain but somehow trusted. It feels like choice. It feels like you saw someone and decided in that moment, them. But beneath that feeling of freedom, something much older is moving, something faster than thought, something that formed long before you had language for love. Before you ever consciously choose someone, your nervous system has already begun scanning. Tone of voice, facial expressions, micro-pauses in speech, the way someone looks at you, directly, indirectly, intensely, distracted, the rhythm of their responses, their emotional availability or lack thereof, their confidence, their distance, their warmth, their unpredictability. All of this is processed in seconds below awareness. And your body doesn't ask, is this healthy? It asks, is this familiar? Because familiar is what the nervous system understands. Familiar is what it has survived before. Familiar is what it knows how to navigate. This is why two people can walk into the same room and feel drawn to completely different partners. On paper, someone might be kind, stable, emotionally mature, but if their emotional energy doesn't match the patterns stored in your system,
Even if that dynamic once hurt you, especially if it hurt you, because unresolved emotional patterns don't disappear, they wait. And when they sense something similar, they light up, pulling you toward what feels meaningful, electric, important. You call it falling for someone, but part of you is falling into a familiar emotional role. This is where the illusion of choice begins to crack. You may think you're freely selecting partners based on personality, shared interests, or values, and those things do matter, but beneath those conscious preferences is a deeper filter, one shaped by early experiences, past relationships, and emotional wounds that never fully healed. That filter operates quickly and quietly. It doesn't ask for your opinion, it doesn't announce its criteria, it simply creates a feeling, drawn in, or not interested. And you trust the feeling. You say, I can't explain it, I just feel connected. Or, they're great on paper, but I don't feel the spark. But what if the spark isn't a sign of compatibility? What if it's a sign of familiarity with a certain kind of emotional pain? This is the unsettling part, the part that feels like the floor shifting under your feet. If your attraction is shaped by old wounds, if your nervous system is pulling you toward what it recognizes rather than what is healthy, are you really choosing? Or are you being guided by patterns you never consciously agreed to? This question can feel heavy, almost disheartening at first. It challenges the romantic idea that love simply happens, that the heart knows best, that chemistry is truth. But the purpose of seeing this is not to take hope away, it's to give you your choice back. Because while your initial attraction may be automatic, your awareness of it does not have to be. You can begin to notice the difference between what feels intensely familiar and what is actually supportive, respectful, and emotionally safe. You can start asking new questions. Not just, do I feel drawn to them, but how does my body feel around them over time? Do I feel calm or constantly on edge? Do I feel seen or like I'm performing? Attraction may still arise in old ways. Your nervous system may still light up around people who mirror the past. But now there's space between the feeling and the decision. Space to observe the pull without immediately obeying it. And in that space, something powerful begins to grow. The ability to choose not just what feels intense, but what actually allows you to feel safe, valued, and at peace. The illusion of choice begins to dissolve, not into helplessness, but into a deeper, more conscious kind of freedom. Because once you see the pattern, you're no longer completely inside it. There is a moment in every cycle when something inside you quietly whispers, "I've been here before." Not the excitement at the beginning, not the intensity, the late-night conversations, the feeling that this time is different. That part always feels new. The moment comes later, when your chest tightens in a familiar way, when you reread a message and feel that old drop in your stomach, when your thoughts begin to orbit around one person like a planet caught in gravity, and somewhere beneath the noise there's a quiet recognition. This feeling, I know this feeling. For a long time, you may have believed the solution was out there, that the pattern would finally break when you met someone different, kinder, more emotionally available, more stable. You told yourself you just needed better luck, better taste, better timing. But patterns like this don't break at the level of people. They break at the level of pain. Because every time you enter a relationship hoping it will fix the old wound, you are asking another person to complete a story that began long before they arrived. And without realizing it, you start shaping yourself around that hope. You tolerate what hurts. You chase reassurance. You try to be more understanding, more patient, more lovable, all in an effort to finally get what you didn't receive before. But healing does not happen by reenacting the past with new characters. It happens when you stop running from the original feeling long enough to actually face it. This is the emotional time loop, the same wound replayed with different faces, the same longing, the same fear of abandonment, the same anxiety when love feels uncertain. Each relationship feels like a chance to finally resolve it, but instead, the loop resets. Breaking it begins in a way that feels almost backwards. Instead of chasing the next person, you turn toward the feeling itself. The loneliness, the fear of not being chosen, the ache of emotional neglect, the old belief that you have to earn love. These feelings can be uncomfortable, even overwhelming at first. For years, relationships may have served as distractions from them. As long as you were pursuing someone, pleasing someone, worrying about someone, you didn't have to sit alone with the original pain. But when you stop outsourcing healing to relationships, you begin to build a new capacity, the ability to stay with your own emotional experience without trying to escape it through another person. You start noticing the difference between anxiety and intuition, between red flags and chemistry. That intense pull towards someone emotionally unavailable, it doesn't just mean attraction anymore. It becomes information, a signal that your nervous system has been activated, not necessarily that your heart has found home. You begin to see how quickly your system confuses emotional intensity with connection, how unpredictability can feel magnetic, how the highs and lows of unstable dynamics can mimic passion. And slowly, you learn to pause, to ask, does this feel safe or does it feel familiar? At first, calm may feel strange, even boring. A partner who communicates clearly, who doesn't trigger constant doubt, who shows up consistently may not light up your nervous system in the dramatic way you're used to. But that quiet is not emptiness. It's peace your system hasn't learned to trust yet. Staying in that calm, without running back to emotional chaos, is part of breaking the loop. It requires tolerating a new kind of experience, one where love does not feel like survival, but like steadiness. At the same time, something else begins to shift inside you, your sense of worth.
When your self-worth depends on being chosen, relationships become auditions. You overgive, you over-explain, you try to prove your value through patience, loyalty, understanding. You shape yourself around what you think will keep someone from leaving. But when you begin to build self-worth separate from romantic validation, a quiet strength forms. You no longer need someone else's attention to confirm your value. You can enjoy connection without clinging to it for identity. This changes who you are available to, not because you force different preferences, but because your nervous system is no longer starving for the same emotional scraps. You are less drawn to people who make you work for basic care, less tolerant of dynamics that feel like emotional roller coasters. Love starts to look different, less addictive, more grounding, less about obsession, more about safety.
It feels steady, respectful, warm without being overwhelming. And this is the philosophical shift at the heart of everything. You don't break the pattern by finding someone who loves you differently. You break it by learning to love without reliving the past, by staying present with your feelings instead of projecting them onto partners, by choosing relationships that feel healthy even if they don't match your old emotional blueprint, by letting love be calm even when your system is used to storms. The time loop doesn't shatter all at once. It loosens gradually each time you respond differently, each time you notice an old pull and pause, each time you choose self-respect over emotional familiarity. And one day, you may find yourself in a relationship that feels unfamiliar in the best way, not because it's intense, but because it's safe, not because it completes an old wound, but because it doesn't reopen it. That's when you realize the loop has finally begun to release its grip, not because love changed, but because you did. At first, it doesn't feel like love. There's no rush of adrenaline when your phone lights up, no dizzy spiral of wondering where you stand, no dramatic highs followed by silent, aching lows. Instead, there is something quieter, almost suspiciously calm. You find yourself waiting for the intensity to kick in, for the emotional roller coaster to start, for the familiar anxiety that once convinced you something important was happening. But it doesn't come. They text back when they say they will. They don't disappear for days. They don't keep you guessing about how they feel. There are no cryptic signals to decode, no emotional puzzles to solve. Conversations are straightforward. Disagreements don't turn into wars. Silence doesn't feel like punishment. And because your nervous system has been trained on chaos, this steadiness can feel empty. You might catch yourself thinking, where's the spark? Or why doesn't this feel as intense as before? What you are actually noticing is the absence of survival mode. For years, your idea of connection may have been tangled with uncertainty. Love meant vigilance. Attachment meant bracing for impact. Closeness came with a background hum of fear. Fear of losing, of not being enough, of being left behind. So when a relationship doesn't activate those old alarms, it can feel like something is missing. But what's missing is not love, it's threat. Healthy love often arrives without fireworks. It builds slowly, like warmth returning to hands that have been cold for too long. It feels stable, predictable, gentle. And to a system used to emotional turbulence, gentleness can feel almost invisible at first. This is the quiet paradox of healing. Peace can feel unfamiliar enough to be mistaken for boredom. Yet, if you stay, if you allow yourself to experience connection without chaos, something deeper begins to unfold. You start to relax in ways you didn't know were possible. Your thoughts don't spiral after every interaction. Your body doesn't tense waiting for the next emotional drop. You begin to trust that care doesn't have to be earned through suffering. Intimacy stops feeling like a performance and starts feeling like a shared space. You are not trying to prove your worth, you are simply present, and the other person is too. This kind of love doesn't demand that you abandon yourself to keep it. It doesn't require you to shrink, to over-explain, to chase reassurance. It meets you where you are, without turning connection into a test you're afraid to fail. And slowly, the younger part of you, the one who kept choosing familiar pain, hoping for a different ending, begins to understand something new. Love does not have to hurt to be real. Intensity is not the same as intimacy. Chaos is not the same as passion. The reason you kept finding the same pain was never because you were broken. It was because a part of you was still trying to return to an old emotional landscape, searching for a moment that never came, the moment when someone would finally stay, finally choose you, finally make the past feel different. But the past does not heal by being replayed. It heals when you stop auditioning partners to fix it and start building safety in the present. That safety begins inside you, in the way you speak to yourself, in the boundaries you keep, in the willingness to walk away from what feels intense but unsafe, in the courage to stay with what feels calm but unfamiliar. From there, your choices begin to change, not because you force yourself to want different people, but because your nervous system is no longer magnetized to the same old pain. You begin to recognize red flags as signals, not sparks. You begin to value steadiness over drama, respect over obsession, consistency over emotional mystery. And one day, you may look at the relationship you're in and notice something surprising. You feel at ease, not constantly thrilled, not perpetually anxious, just safe, seen, able to breathe. What once would have felt boring now feels like home, not the home of your past wounds, but the home of who you are becoming. That is the quiet revolution at the end of the cycle. You don't attract the same painful relationships by accident. You were following emotional patterns your nervous system once learned to survive. But awareness changes the pattern. And with that awareness, love no longer feels like a battlefield you have to win. It feels like a place where you can finally rest.